Anyway, Jules, what a weekend. Barcelona with their comeback against Atletico Madrid. Inter winning big again, away to Atalanta. Huge win for them. Leverkusen, late heroics.
Okay.
Le Classique in
Yes.
Ligue 1. So I'm told, 19 points clear, but whatever it is, whatever. But we have to start. The League Cup final, as you know, is one of my least favorite competitions in the world.
Oh, that's mean.
But there is a certain enormity to this. Newcastle United beating Liverpool in the final comprehensively.
Yeah.
For those who live in England, they understand the importance of Newcastle and sort of this kind of mythical status it inhabits. I think it's fair to say around the world, it's not quite as clear cut why Newcastle is so important, why this is such a big deal. They have this incredible stadium right in the center of town. They, for many, many years, they had the highest or second highest average attendance. It's an incredibly passionate place. They had not won a trophy famously since 1968 when they won the Intercity Fairs Cup, which was the predecessor of the Europa League. They had not won a domestic trophy in 70 years, 69 years, whatever it is.
In 1955, 70 years.
And they had so many near misses over the years. I think it was 9 straight games at Wembley that they'd lost. And so for them to go and win this game, just put it in some kind of historical context.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, a wonderful day at Wembley 2 years after losing the League Cup final to Manchester United. This time not making the same mistakes that they made 2 years ago, controlling the game much more and maybe overall wanting much more than Liverpool did. For Liverpool, we can talk about later, another very disappointing performance. But I think all the credit should go, or most of it should go to Newcastle, the way they've approached the game. There was nothing new in the tactics. We knew exactly what the starting 11 would be, and it was that. We knew how they had to play to win and to beat this Liverpool team, especially in midfield, and just boss the game and boss the midfield, and that's exactly what they did. And then they've got in Isak, one of the best strikers in the world. We know that, and they were also very good on set pieces, which Liverpool struggles on.
And I think we should point out about Newcastle as well. They were playing without probably their second biggest attacking threat, Anthony Gordon, suspended for this final for a very silly, for a very, very silly red card that he got a couple weeks ago. And so he lines up with Harvey Barnes, with Murphy. You know, again, good players, but we're not talking necessarily powerhouse. I know there's people talking about the Saudi money. Again, for people who don't follow Newcastle, we don't talk about Newcastle as often as we talk about Manchester United or Arsenal or Liverpool. But the reality is this is a team that has spent money, but they haven't gone crazy. They've stayed within the parameters. And you're right, on the day, Isak phenomenal. But I want to ask you, I'm going to guess you did not score many headed goals in your career.
No.
However, Dan Burns' header, the distance it travels, is that on the goalkeeper? Because a phenomenal header, but to be able to, when you're hitting when you're heading the ball from that far out, you know, there's only so much power you can put on it.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, he's such a free header that I think the ball can go anywhere. He could have really directed the ball anywhere.
Right.
And he directed it where he came from the corner. But it's Alexis McAllister defending on him. And you can even see McAllister just giving up. He's not even trying to contest the ball. He's just like, okay, I'll let you, and then I'm hoping for the best, because McAllister should never be, even if it's a zonal marking where McAllister's role is just to kind of just bother a little bit Dan Burn, who's twice his size. After that, it's just a perfect header. I'm not sure Kelleher really can do any different.
I know. I just love it. I had to mention at the top because I love it when big people do
and
big
Burn
things.
is Newcastle born and bred, so for him to score this first goal was just something
fairy tale stuff.
Yeah,
we have to mention though, without taking anything away from Liverpool, from Newcastle, Liverpool, they look flat. They look tired.
Yeah.
On top of that, I don't think Arne Slot's tactics and substitutions helped.
No, definitely not. Terrible performance again. Poor from Slot.
Well, you say again. They were much better. I mean, they weren't that bad against Paris Saint-Germain.
But they were still not great. They were not great against Southampton in the first half. They were not good in Paris a few days before that. And it's very much the same. There's just nothing in that team, even with the ball. The Chiesa goal is good at the end, but there's not enough from them.
Jules, let's go back and give Newcastle some love here. And I want to start actually with Eddie Howe. I am not a big Eddie Howe guy. It's not that I think he's bad, but I always think I find him sometimes difficult to understand how he approaches things. I think Jason Tyndall is not my favorite person. I know a lot of people like him. But like we said at the top, I think he got everything right. And we've talked about kind of Newcastle's run later in the season this year. But really, I think so much of it has to do with the midfield and what he's getting out of Joelinton, Sandro Tonali, and Bruno Guimaraes. I thought they played Liverpool off the park in that area of the pitch.
Absolutely, yeah. Which they did again in the 3-3 draw that they had at St James's Park in the league. But yeah, for me, from the beginning, maybe more than Salah against Livramento on one side, which could have been a key of these games, maybe even more than Kwanzaa against Barnes, for example, on the other side, because Kwanzaa really should not have played that game if Trent or Bradley are both not injured. And I really thought the midfield, because we saw against PSG especially, Liverpool struggling because McAllister and Gravenberch were never really, and Szoboszlai were never really in the game. And again, if you take them out of it and the way they've controlled games before and the pace of a game going fast or slower, the way Szoboszlai has been in his own pressing and counter-pressing, if you take them out of the game, which is not easy because they've been outstanding for most of the season, especially Gravenberch and McAllister, then Liverpool are just a bit lost, because there's one thing for Van Dijk to hit the ball diagonally to Salah, which he does a lot, and is one way of the build-up. Usually it goes through Gravenberch and McAllister, everything. So if you are better than them in that area of the pitch because you're more aggressive, because you are always in their faces, because they can't turn, then you take away a lot of their game. And that's what PSG did really well in both games. And again, that's what Newcastle were able to do. And Tonali is this great, I think, work engine. He's smart. He's good on the ball. He's got pretty much everything. Bruno is a wonderful technical player in midfield. But for me, Joelinton yesterday, when he was the one, he's often the one that has to be the most aggressive and the most physical and the most running everywhere and everything. Not the rest. The other two are much better than him at doing. And I just thought he was perfect for that. And that's how you win finals, is with that kind of grit and being aggressive and all of that. And that's Joelinton for you.
You mentioned Joelinton there, and I want to give him a little bit more love because younger listeners may not know this, but and this is part of the reason why I hate it when people put labels. He's a 6, he's an 8, he's a 9, he's a false 9, he's a 10.5, he's an enganche. Oh, get your stupid nomenclature out of my face, please. Joelinton grew up as a center forward, played center forward, signed for Newcastle as a center forward, as a big, strong target man. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
And then he has reinvented himself as a midfielder, and people who watch the Premier League know this, over the last, 3-4 years, and has become so effective. And he did it in mid-career. He didn't do this when he was it's not like Trent, doing it at 17 or 18. I think that's really impressive. I think that speaks to his intelligence. I think that speaks to the coaches he's had and the coaching he's had. And I think this is the kind of stuff that should be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is Eddie Howe's idea from the beginning, and I think he deserves a lot of credit, as Joelinton, for taking it on board and like you said, transforming himself into that position. But then I hear you about don't put labels on players, but there's not many number 9s who become number 8 full stop, and even less good number 8s like Joelinton is. But that's great, and I like it. There's something very, very interesting he said before the game. He said we're going to change everything that we did before the final 2 years ago against United that they lost, where they were never in the game really. And that United team was not as good really on paper, certainly, and through the season as this current Liverpool.
Although they also had a bald Dutch manager.
That's true. Because Newcastle could really have said, okay, let's take a few lessons from what we did and didn't do 2 years ago. But they didn't have to change everything like they did. Transportation, hotels, habits before games, all of that changed. And they could have also lost the final yesterday. Of course, they could have. But I like the fact that Eddie Howe thought, okay, 2 years ago just didn't work. We were not in that final. The event and the pressure got the better of us. It can happen when you're not used to playing finals. It's not easy to go into finals. I was at Wembley yesterday. I was on the pitch before. I've played at Wembley charity matches with nobody in the stands. And even when you play a charity match with no one in the stands or like 10 people, it's impressive already. Imagine with 90,000, 45 of yours and 45 of the others in a game that matters, not a charity game, like a proper final with a trophy at the end or a promotion or whatever your game is scary. It really is. Even for professional players, even for people with experience, older players, it's not easy, I think, to cope with all of that. And I like the fact that Eddie Howe decided to change something, and clearly it worked because they were just a different beast this time.
And I think in Newcastle too, I mean, I think the players who are there feel it also. It's not easy to cope with the losing streak, with some people called it a curse, with the weight of history. Final word on Newcastle. Alexander Isak, we've praised him many times. We've talked about how he's locked into this long-term contract where he does not make anywhere near probably what he should be making based on his production.
Yeah.
But then if you're Newcastle, you have all the leverage.
Yeah.
And he's kind of stuck in that position where Newcastle aren't in a position where they're forced to sell. They're not in a position where they're forced to give him a new deal for a lot more money. It's an unusual situation, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. Unless somebody comes and pay the 100 million that they will want, because really they can't ask for much more than 100 million euros for somebody like Isak. I think this is probably his value and maybe even a bit more than his value. And if somebody comes with that, they might want to sell. If there's no Champions League, however, next season, maybe he can knock at the door and say, listen, this is great here. We won the League Cup, wonderful. They can, I guess they can build on that. But really, a player like him has to play the Champions League every single season. And if Newcastle can't really guarantee this, then I think he's also in the right of saying, I loved it here. It was great. Thank you, because I went to another level in my game. But now I want to go to a team that can win the Champions League every season, which is not them.
Yeah, and I think the interesting one is, I mean, when you talk about, the number 100 million, we've talked about how the transfer spending has been depressed and is going down, and we expect transfer numbers, transfer fees anyway to go down. I think, again, the difficulty is 100 million. There's a finite number of clubs who can afford to pay 100 million pounds for him. And some of those clubs don't need a center forward. Many of those clubs can't afford it. I mean, could there be a scenario, maybe some post-Kane Bayern? Could there be a scenario if Arteta ever decides to spend on a striker? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think Arsenal can spend 100 million now on somebody else unless unless they sell Nwaneri to Real Madrid or whatever. Not going to happen. I'm joking. Please don't freak out. Real Madrid have locked up all their money in strikers.
But for example, I think...
I'm saying this is good news for Newcastle.
No, it is. Maybe. You're right, it is. But I also think... I look at Liverpool yesterday again, like I did against PSG on Tuesday and the week before. For me, they've got an issue at number 9. Darwin is not good enough. Despite the heavy investment on him, you thought he could be the guy. He's not the guy. He hasn't been the guy so far. I don't think he's going to be the guy anytime soon. Jota, for me, is too lightweight for a team like this. Yeah, he would be a good squad player. He can come off the bench, play in different positions on that front three, but he's not Liverpool's number 9 that can take you to Champions League, trebles, etc., etc. So if you're Liverpool and you have money, I guess, because you haven't spent in the last 3 transfer windows, that Darwin Núñez can surely be, you can decide to let him go and keep Jota, go for Alexander Isak. For me, it's all there, all ready for you, Liverpool.
All right, there you go. He's trolling. I mean, I think a lot would depend on how much money they end up committing to their 3 big free agents. Trent Alexander-Arnold, by the way, moving on to Liverpool, obviously unavailable for this game. Connor Bradley injured too. Jarrell Quansah plays there. Okay, so it means that you don't have the attacking spark that you would normally get from there.
Yeah.
Is this part of the reason that they struggled? They didn't have Trent coming forward, offering an alternative to the midfielders in construction? Or is this an alibi for Slot?
No, because I think Trent and Bradley, because I think Bradley would have been...
Trent or Bradley.
Because without Trent, they've played really well at times with Bradley at right back. Yeah, it's difficult. But then I think between Tuesday night and the defeat against PSG and the Trent injury, you've had 5 days you knew that Quansah would be a right back. I guess there was a few rumors on Friday that Curtis Jones could play a right back. for that more control in midfield and stepping up. So this is something you could have done. You could have done a Valverde, Curtis Jones move from midfield to right back too. But they decided to go with Kwanzaa. So you're going to have... Kwanzaa is not going to bring anything forward. I think he hardly ran past the halfway line apart from on set pieces to go on set pieces. So that's not his game. So just do it differently. I think just do something differently. If you're Slot and you know there's nothing coming from the right-hand side, but only from the left with Robertson, just do your build-up phases differently. Just do something else with the ball. And instead, they just did nothing different than if Kwanzaa was not the right back.
Somebody asked me this. This is a serious question. I'm going to throw it to you since you're Mr. Technical. You know how obviously there's inverted wingers who come inside so that they can strike it with their stronger foot. Now, there's a long history of right-footed left backs, probably mostly out of necessity. I can't think of many left-footed right backs. I'm sure you can maybe think of some.
Yeah, no. Ferland Mendy played there.
But would that have been an option? Might that have been something to think about? Tsimikas on the right and just coming for his passing? Or is that just stupid?
No.
Especially because you're not playing against wingers. There's no Anthony Gordon there, right?
Yeah.
So you have Murphy and Harvey Barnes. We're just different profiles of players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think this is a bad shot at all. Maybe they had this conversation. Maybe Tsimikas didn't feel okay. Maybe Slot doesn't like it and thought, okay, Kwanzaa played okay-ish against PSG when he came on, to be fair to him, in extra time and towards the end of that second half as well. So they thought it would be good there. I don't know. Right. I also think the Liverpool had enough talented players on the pitch
to
still
play
better
about defending.
To still play better than that with the ball.
And let's get to that. I think there's two more points I really want to hit on Liverpool. One is the substitution. Gravenberch and Konate off. No.
Jota and Konate off.
Jota and Konate, yeah. Darwin and Curtis Jones on. So you take off your center back, which means Ryan Gravenberch, who is your midfield playmaker, has been your midfield playmaker all season, moves into the back. The only way I can kind of justify it is if he thought that at that stage Newcastle were going to go in full bus parking lockdown mode, which they did to some degree, which we've seen them do in the past. And so he's like, I don't really need two center backs. I can just have Ryan playmake from deeper.
Yeah, I mean...
does that make sense, though? Like, why would you take Konate off unless he was unfit?
So Konate obviously struggled with a bit of cramps at the end of the PSG game. By the time those two substitutions that you mentioned, Gabby, are done, they're 2-0 down already because Isak has scored the second goal. And I think there's maybe, okay, we haven't played well. We need more control. We need better passing maybe. So Gravenberch from centre back, that is actually really a midfielder, but he's there next to Van Dijk when they lose the ball to have that line of four. But really, he's more of a midfielder that sometimes just drops a little bit deeper, I guess. So you wanted more control because you had zero control until then. You just had nothing until then anyway. So maybe you change something.
But you're going to have more control because at 2-0, Newcastle are going to play on the counter.
Exactly
so you're going to have more of the ball anyway.
Yeah, so maybe it's not a bad idea because on the counter, Kwanzaa, Van Dijk and Robertson are probably okay. And they were, to be fair, because Newcastle just then defended their lead, which they were always going to do.
All right. We're big fans of Mohamed Salah, but we also expect our big stars and our big players to show up in big games.
Yeah.
This is not a good period from him between the Paris Saint-Germain games and this game.
No, it's not. It's a real struggle against, I guess, the physicality and the pace of Nuno Mendes in 2 games against PSG where your team was not the best team. I can maybe just about understand it. Against Livramento on Sunday in a final, although Mo Salah hasn't been very good in finals overall in general for Liverpool, by the way, let's not forget. I think this is 1 goal in 8 now. But you would still expect better from him than this. And 23 touches, that means to his credit, he hasn't seen much of the ball either in 103 minutes. Because when you have 23 touches, the ball coming at you 23 times, this is just how many times the ball got to him. 23 times in 103 minutes. This is ridiculous. So he was never served, really. And when he was served, He did nothing with the ball. He had 0 shot, 1 dribble, 1 touch in the Newcastle box. So he was so far away from the box that, on the other hand, what do you expect him to do? There was just nothing. It's not like if he'd missed 4 big chances and had plenty of good positions, made wrong decisions. He literally had nothing. He did nothing when he had the ball, and he didn't have it often. And he really did nothing because his team struggled to find him.
He's been banging this drum for the last 2 months, as you know, which is Arne Slot rotated very little at the beginning. And I think he was justified in rotating very little because he had to build the chemistry, get the team to kind of metabolize his ideas, and that's totally fine. However, now, as I said, I hope at some point he doesn't pay the price for it. I don't think there's any question that they're paying the price for it at this stage.
In tiredness, you mean?
In fatigue,
Yeah.
in lack of sharpness. 120 minutes, obviously midweek against Paris Saint-Germain, that takes a lot out of you mentally and psychologically. If Real Madrid are allowed to make excuses for, sorry, if Atleti are allowed to make excuses for that, Liverpool certainly are.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is this part of the learning curve? Because at Feyenoord, he used his whole squad, and he used his whole squad a lot. I just wonder, looking back on it, like, yeah, we've won the title. We will win the Premier League title. That is the most important thing. That is a tremendous achievement. But everything, nothing is for free, right? That comes at the expense of the situation where now you kind of pay a price for it.
Yeah, I think the mistakes, for me, the mistakes he made were against Southampton. So between the 2 PSG games, only making 3 changes, I thought that was ridiculous from him, because they would have won the game. And even if they hadn't won the game, they were still they're so clear of Arsenal in the league that even a draw, they would have taken it. So then after that, you just make the 3 substitutions that you made from the PSG first leg, again after Southampton, to the PSG second leg. And then again, it's the same team that played again, bar Trent, in the game against Newcastle. So between PSG, Southampton, PSG, Newcastle, those 4 games in 2 weeks, that's a lot of games. One, as you said, that went 120 minutes. The first game against PSG, where they ran after the ball for the whole 90 minutes because they never had it and they were under pressure, even if they were playing deep. Then the Southampton game, okay, first half was terrible. Second half was a little bit better. I don't think that took much energy off them. But still, it was 8 of the 11 that started 3 days before that played again. And those same 11 after that, and the same 10 out of 11 again on Sunday. That, for me, more than earlier in the season, this is where really he made a mistake.
And that's why I think Michael Edwards and Liverpool have so many big calls to make over the next couple months. So there's obviously the 3 free agents, Trent, Virgil, and Mohamed Salah. I hope the whole pay him what he wants brigade just go away and understand the reality of the situation.
We said, yeah.
There's a price where it makes sense. There's a price where it doesn't make sense. In some ways, you have a tremendous amount of flexibility. Should you have to say goodbye to 1, 2, maybe even all 3 of them, you then free up a lot of money to bring in others. You have to be smart about that.
Yeah.
I think without question, you have to bolster the midfield with somebody who can play Ryan Gravenberch's position.
Other than Endo, yeah.
But it's not Endo, obviously, as somebody who can fill in for Gravenberch better than McAllister. Because when you put McAllister there, you're taking him away from somewhere else, and there's a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
The strikers are obviously a situation that needs to be addressed. Virgil van Dijk, even if he stays, isn't getting any younger. I would have to ask a lot of questions about Konate's injuries. You may need, Bradley, I suppose, can deputize at right back. So there is a lot. For teams that won the title, there's a possibility that this will be a big, big summer of change at Liverpool.